Температура воздуха в этом регионе Казахстана...
In wintertime, air temperature in this region of Kazakhstan can reach 48 degrees of frost. This is where the Kazakh Khan's camp was once located. This is the northernmost part of the country. Hello, this is another episode of the Terra Incognita project, and my name is Anton Fedorov. I've come to the North Kazakhstan region. This is the smallest region compared to other regions of Kazakhstan. Its area barely exceeds 98,000 square kilometers. However, the North Kazakhstan region can rightly be called one of the most ancient ones, because evidence of humans living in these lands dates back millions of years ago, as early as the ancient Paleolithic era. The history of the North Kazakhstan region has many stages and periods. Different cultures and nations lived here. Ancient civilizations originated and disappeared in this land. One of the most striking historical segments of the life of this region is the Turkic time, when a vast territory of Kazakhstan had served as a bridge between the East and the West, due to its development and geographical position for many centuries. People who lived here at that time for many centuries found themselves in the very center of the migration routes of Eurasia. According to scientists, the totality of cultural, linguistic, and anthropological characteristics of the ethnic formations of the Turkic time of Kazakhstan served as a natural historical launching pad for the ultimate development of the Kazakh ethnic group and independent ethnic entities in the medieval historical part of the Eurasian continent. In the middle of the last century, in one of the local villages, when digging a well, charcoal and mammoth tusks were found at a depth of 18 meters with tool marks and stone tools. It is difficult to date this find, but undoubtedly, it belongs to the Paleolithic glacial epoch. I'm heading to the regional museum to learn more about the history of this region.
The
building of the North Kazakhstan Local Regional Museum is an architectural monument of the city of Petropavlovsk in itself. It was built in 1891 by a merchant named Archel. The first floor of the building was occupied by a stone workshop with a hotel on the second floor. Over the years, the designation of this house changed until it was transferred to the Local Regional Museum in the middle of the last century. Millions of years ago, the natural conditions of the North Kazakhstan region with its mild climate, natural landscapes, flora and fauna made this region an excellent place to settle. Abundant water resources of the region, large rivers and lakes, provided an abundance of vegetation and contributed to an increase in the population of animals, which of course attracted ancient hunters. The regional museum holds unique exhibits confirming the emergence of life in this region millions of years ago.
Среди уникальных, очень редких находок.
Mammoth tusks are among the unique, very rare findings in our museum. This one is the most ancient find, which was discovered on the territory of Kazakhstan. The find was made in 1923, and by chance, fishermen went to the Ishim River to fish and saw what they thought were giant bones sticking out of the ground. After being seized by archaeologists, they were studied and turned out that these are neither more nor less than mammoths' tusks. Indeed, mammoths used to live on the territory of our land, the giants of the animal world. At that time, it was the end of the ancient Paleolithic age. There lived large, woolly giants who came here to us on the territory of northern Kazakhstan.
Заходили сюда к нам на территорию северного Казахстана.
Primitive population actively used the wide-ranging, favorable for living valley of the Ishim River, one of the main river of the North Kazakhstan region. This is vividly illustrated by the archaeological map of the Stone Age monuments found in this region. Camps, settlements, and workshops from that historical period usually concentrated in certain micro-districts, the most convenient for the dwelling of an ancient man and for industrial and economic activities. The results of studying the remnants of the fauna and instruments of labor of the sites of the North Kazakhstan region suggest the primary importance of hunting in the household of the tribes inhabiting local lands. The huntable species were elks and bulls, like a bison or a wild ox. Thrown hunting weapons included spears, darts, arrows with stone tips, with a dulled edge. Fishery began to play a certain role in human life. Over the years, the social structure of the society has also changed. People grouped more and more. Probably at this time, a large family community was being formed with certain legal basis regulating the relations between its members, as well as the division of hunting grounds among the tribes. In addition, within the family community, the distribution of hunting game and objects of labor and the family relationship itself should have been regulated. This indicates the appearance of the primitive communal system in the region. For centuries, the ancient tribes founded settlements here. There was a systematic development of the local territories, and by the end of the 18th century, trade along river routes was already actively carried on in the region. Various enterprises worked, and agriculture flourished. By this time, such a class as merchants had already emerged in the social system.
Несомненно, одной из самых ярких жемчужин нашей музейной коллекции является...
Undoubtedly, one of the brightest gems in our museum collection is Idarbekov, Idris Kaji's chair. This chair was made at the turn of the 19th and 20th centuries for a very rich Bai, Idris Kaji. The manufacture of the chair was attended by an unknown craftsman. He used the rare horns of a wild ox, adorning the back of this chair. At that time, the European wild ox was completely exterminated and was no longer found on our planet. This chair was kept in the Idris Kaji's family and donated by his great-granddaughter to us to preserve.
Правнучкой Венерой на сохранении.
The merchant class of the Ishim River Valley, despite its deep historical roots, took final shape only by the end of the 18th century. Initially, it was one of the most economically strong groups of the population, with activities that were inextricably linked to the development of industrial production, trade, credit and banking system, and transport. The merchants were active in the public area. They participated in the work of local governments and in the activities of political parties. There were many philanthropists among them.
Зарождение купеческого класса – одна из
The birth of a merchant class is one of the most important pages in the history of Petropavlovsk. It was the enterprising people who gave rise to the development of industry, agriculture, and trade in the region. This hall presents an interesting exposition, the interior of a merchant's house. One can imagine how local entrepreneurs lived here more than 100 years ago. All these items were donated to the museum by the descendants of local bourgeois, with one very unique exhibit among them. This is a music box from the beginning of the 20th century. It is still in a good condition.
В исправном состоянии.
But the entrepreneurial class did not last long in the region. In the 1930s, the totalitarian system of the Soviet Union became engaged in the destruction of the wealthy farms of farmers and industrialists. In just North Kazakhstan region alone, almost 6,000 medium and large industrial and agricultural associations were liquidated.
Административный центр Северо-Казахстанской
The city of Petropavlovsk is the administrative center of the North Kazakhstan region. It originated in 1752 as a fortress to protect local lands from the raids of the Jun Guards. At first, fortification occupied an area of 2 hectares, but over time the settlement expanded and soon became one of the political and economic centers of the Irtysh land. I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the city. By the end of the 18th century, there were already 172 houses in Petropavlovsk, and the population was almost 1,000 inhabitants. 44 merchant shops operated in the central trading part of the settlement. Intensive construction of the city began in the 50s of the last century. In 1894, a line of the Siberian Railway began to be built through the city of Petropavlovsk, which later made the city an important transportation hub connecting the west and the east of the country. The development of the railway sector left its mark on the acceleration of social processes in the region. The opening of the Petropavlovsk station of the Trans-Siberian Railway more than 120 years ago contributed to the growth of the economic infrastructure of the region, which greatly expanded the possibilities for regional trade. The city became the focus of trade in factory goods for the local population. Wholesale trade in livestock and craft production especially flourished.
Петропавловск местами напоминает музей.
Petropavlovsk in some places resembles a museum. Historical architecture creates a special atmosphere here. When walking through the old part of the city, as if you go back into the past unwittingly. And now I want to tell you about one place where, as historians assume, one of the most prominent figures of the Kazakh statehood lived. I came to the museum complex called Residence of Abulai Khan. In the history of the Kazakh land, there are many government and military leaders who have dedicated their lives to a great goal, serving the interests of the people. Among these outstanding people, Abulai Khan occupies a special place. The descendants will remember his contribution to the preservation of the nation, territory, and independence of the country for many centuries. The museum complex where I arrived does not look like the rest of the country's museums. No other museum in Kazakhstan has got such a large-scale historical exposition telling about one legendary person, no longer. This entire beautiful building and the magnificent monument in front of it are dedicated to the person of Abulai Khan. 15 years ago, his state activity aroused great interest in his contemporaries. For 2 years, historians studied the documents describing the time of the rule of Abulai Khan to clarify the role of this person in the history of the entire Kazakh people. Many of the facts found by experts once again confirm that Abulai Khan was a legendary warrior and ruler. Abulai Khan had his residence in Petropavlovsk in 1765. All major government negotiations with other countries, including the Russian Empire, were conducted here. For 56 years, the residency was a simple one-story wooden house, but by 1821 a large stone two-story mansion was built. Now this building houses the main exhibition of the historic site.
В одном из залов музейного комплекса сохранился уникальный исторический...
In one of the halls of the museum, there is a unique historical document confirming the fact of construction of a wooden house in these places as the residency of Abulai Khan. Here it is. Here you can see the layout of the building itself. There are also reports on the builders crossing the borders, where they could bring construction materials here for the construction of the Khan's residence. The exposition of this museum has got 4 halls, where the life of Abulai Khan is described in chronology from the moment of his birth. In the first hall, there are materials about childhood and youth of the great ruler. Abulai Khan comes from a noble family of Kazakh Khans, Joly, the eldest son of Genghis Khan. Abulai Khan's accession to the throne was very difficult. In the first hall, visitors learn about the Khan's lineage, his difficult childhood, his grown-up years, and becoming a military leader and statesman. By the way, Abulai became a Khan when he was 20 years old. Here you will see beautiful samples of military weapons of the 18th century used to obtain the freedom of the Kazakh people from the Dzungars.
Мы с вами находимся в тронном зале. Представлена экспозиция в данном виде, чтобы люди, посетители могли окунуться в тот период и как бы побывать.
We are in the throne room. Here the exhibition is presented in such a way that visitors can plunge in that period and visit the throne room. In this throne room, Abulai Khan hosted guests and resolved some governmental or diplomatic issues. The image of Abulai Khan conveys the emotions of that period. That is, a person sort of plunges into that period and perhaps may become a participant of some kind of diplomatic reception. This very room is very emotional. When people come here, they leave this room as participants of that period, as if they went back to the 18th century.
Выходят из этого зала уже как бы участниками того периода, то есть они как будто бы побывали в XVIII веке.
Abulai Khan was more than just a brave warrior and commander. First of all, he was a skillful diplomat. During his reign, Khan Abulai managed to set the right policy with the Russian Empire and in a persistent fight to defend the lands of the Kazakh Khanate and protect it from attacks of the Dzungars. For that, he won great respect and was honored among the Kazakh people.
За образом Абулай Хана ковер, который также...
There is a carpet behind the image of Abulai Khan, which was also the personification of the Khan's power. The fourth part of it looks unfinished, that is, all the lines go into infinity. The women who weaved such a carpet often conveyed a story, and they thus wanted to show the infinity of Khan's power, that is, all the lines are endless, just as the Khan's family will be endless. They thus desired the infinity of the Khan's power. Abulai's personal becoming takes place in one of the most difficult and critical periods in the history of the Kazakh people, when the Kazakh Khanate split into 3 juzes and the neighboring Dzungaria posed a particular danger. From the childhood, the future Khan had to make a choice between saving his own life and claiming his right to the throne.
Когда он был еще мальчиком, его еще звали, настоящее имя его Абель-Мансур, его родители убивают джунгары, то есть нападают джунгары, убивают...
When he was still a boy, his real name is Abel Mansur. His parents were killed by the Dzungars. That is, the Dzungars attacked them and killed all of his relatives, leaving the boy an orphan. He was rescued by a faithful servant named Oraz. He led him away from his enemies and hid him. Thus, his origin remained behind a veil of mystery. He wandered, hiding his origin. He drank the cup of suffering to the end. He was an ordinary boy. He fed cattle and led a normal life, as all normal children did. But, nevertheless, his origin had its effect. That is, he had been imparted with manners, already was well versed in weapons, and Chingizids were taught to possess 5 types of weapons from childhood. They were taught manners, and they were passed on traditions as future rulers.
Их обучали манерам, обучали определенным, как бы все традиции передавались, так как это будущий правитель.
The fate of Abulai Khan once came to a turning point. In one of the battles against the Dzungars, a young Batar recognized the man who killed his parents among the enemies. It was an invincible warrior named Sharish, whom almost no one dared to take up fight against. Sharish aroused fear, and it seemed it was impossible to overcome the Dzungars under his leadership. And then young Abulai decides to challenge the invincible enemy. The future Khan jumped on his horse and, at full gallop, with one blow, he cut off Sharash's head. This victory played a crucial role in further clashes with the Dzungars.
Он победил того батыра, которого никто не мог победить. А начало войны, можно сказать...
He defeated the Batur whom no one could defeat. Each major battle or war began with a duel of Baturs. It was believed that the army of the Batur that wins has an advantage, so the Kazakhs could not defeat Sharash. Thereby, their morale was low and their Dzungars won. And they could only be defeated in unity. This was the idea that Abulai Khan was able to convey to Kazakh society, and from that moment they began to come to unity, and from that time they began to win.
Они стали приходить к единству. И с этого момента они начали побеждать. В 1771 году перед казахами не стоит вопрос.
In 1771, the Kazakhs faced a question: who will be their appointed Khan? And unanimously, Abulai Khan was raised on a white felt pad. That is, at that time, he had already had a certain authority, which he used to call for unity. He wanted to unite the entire Kazakh Khanate, which he subsequently succeeded in. He recreated, one might say, a strong army, because until that moment, before the fight between Abulai Khan and Sharash, the Dzungar Khanate was considered invincible.
Джунгарское ханство считалось непобедимым.
Abulai Khan's foreign policy was characterized by flexibility and compromises with such countries as Russia and China. Abulai Khan did not refuse Russian protectorate, but did not allow the influence of both powers to increase in their relations. Thanks to the activities of this great man, the Kazakh people managed to preserve their national identity, customs, history, and culture. All the activities of the great Abulai eventually led to the establishment of an independent Kazakhstan.
Петропавловск – это город, который удивляет.
Petropavlovsk is a city that surprises not only with its history, but also with its modernity. Despite the fact that it is daytime now, I invite you to look at the stars with me. Impossible, you say? Perhaps. I will answer, because we're going to the Astrophysical Observatory of Petropavlovsk. The stars have always been of interest to a man. They have been studied since ancient times. Maps and routes of distant land journeys and sea voyages were made according to their position in the sky. This astrophysical observatory is the place where space and solar system are explored. The observatory itself is part of the North-Kazakhstan State University, named after Kozygbayev, and is an excellent platform for scientific student research.
В обсерватории города Петропавловска находится...
There is a telescope in the observatory of Petropavlovsk. Its modification is called RK-30. It can be used to see Venus or even the rings of Saturn. This is, by the way, the second largest telescope in Kazakhstan. The planetarium projector allows you to obtain high-quality color image of more than 3,000 stars in each hemisphere of the celestial sphere. And it is possible to demonstrate the starry sky anywhere in the world and at any time of the year and day. Today, students are studying the Moon, Mars, and even theories about the possible relocation of people from Earth. Since ancient times, a man was interested in exploring the expanses of space, and of course nowadays, when the population is increasing and there is a decrease in the food reserves of our land, scientists are interested in exploring the nearest objects where our population would be resettled. For the resettlement and construction of a base, it is necessary to study the surface of the Moon. In our observatory, we study the so-called short temporary lunar phenomena that take place on the Moon's surface. By studying them, we can find out where they are happening more, in which part of the Moon, and where they are not as frequent. Of course, the resettlement of humanity is an interesting thing, but I don't think it is something that people will have to think about anytime soon. Well, it's time for me to move on, and now I want to tell you about a very interesting tradition that has been firmly incorporated into the culture of the Kazakh people since ancient times.
После непростого трудового дня на холоде
After a hard day of working in the cold, the best rest, of course, can be a real wood-heated bath. And now I'm going to tell you about the healing properties of this amazing invention of mankind. Why do I say humankind? Because it is impossible to know exactly who invented the bath. In the culture of many nations, there are unique traditions in the construction of baths and their use. Ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote about the very first baths. In his writings, he described the mobile baths of the Saki tribes. These baths resembled the form of a yurt and were covered with felt. For healing steaming, the Saki used various herb infusions or plant seeds. Over the centuries, the bathing culture has become increasingly common. It is believed that comfortable baths were built in the countries of the ancient East, such as China, India, Egypt, 300 to 400 years ago. And in the countries of the Muslim world, the bath culture emerged even earlier, approximately in the 11th century AD. Many types of baths have survived to this day almost unchanged.
Самый главный атрибут в бане – это веник. Его изготавливают из веток березы, дуба или хвойных пород деревьев. Хранят веник обычно в сухом виде.
The most important attribute in the bath is a bath broom. It is made of birch, oak, or conifer trees. A broom is usually stored dry, but must be treated with steam in order to be used. A broom is steamed in warm water, because in cold water it will not be well stewed, while in hot water it may lose its healing properties. The steaming process includes several visits to the steam room. The most important one is the first stage. It should not exceed 5 minutes because it is necessary to prepare the body for further temperature exposure.
Он не должен превышать 5 минут, потому что нужно подготовить организм к дальнейшему температурному воздействию.
The first entry into the steam room is very important as a warm-up before a good workout. Temperature your body is exposed to in the bath can exceed 120 degrees. And in order for steam to benefit you, you need to warm up the body at a temperature of 80 to 85 degrees.
После первого посещения парной
After the visit to the steam room, it is not recommended to take a long break, so that the body does not lose the heat and does not cool down. However, it is necessary to prepare yourself for the second call, and I'll tell you how.
Для этого нужно подготовить тазик с теплой водой и взять черпак. Чтобы в полной мере ощутить целебность.
To do this, prepare a wash basin with warm water and take a scoop. To fully experience the healing properties of steam, you can add essential oils to it. We have silver fir here, but it can be pine needles, mint, sea buckthorns, or any other tincture. About 5 drops per liter of water. Do it by sight. Now this water must be thoroughly stirred. I'm going to pour this water on stones and inhale the beneficial substances of the fir with the steam. Our broom is ready to go, and now it's time for real steaming.
И теперь настало время настоящего парения. Ну что, готовы?
Well, are you ready?
А теперь будет настоящий рок-н-ролл.
Here goes real rock and roll. Bath has a miraculous effect on the human body. In the steam room, there's a deep cleansing of skin and respiratory tract taking place. High temperature accelerates blood circulation in the body, which has a good effect on overall health and improves immunity. And of course, the very feeling of cleanliness and lightness is worth it to go to the bath more often. My acquaintance with the North Kazakhstan region turned out to be as welcoming and warm as it was cold. This was another episode of Terra Incognita program. My name is Anton Fedorov, and I will see you on the air.